Hello everyone, today I'm going to talk about 3 scary true highway stories. One fateful night I was chosen as the designated driver for my group of friends, including Michael, Eddie, and Daniela. We lived in the countryside where the bars and parties were far from home, making it crucial for one of us to remain sober for the drive back. The incident I'm about to recount happened on our way back from one such party, which took us down the unlit and isolated Highway 513. As we drove through this desolate road, flanked by occasional houses but predominantly surrounded by dense forests, the eerie stillness weighed on our nerves. It was here, on this remote road, that we would experience a harrowing encounter. Daniela, in the back seat, suddenly began to panic, frantically claiming she had to use the restroom. I suggested that she wait a bit longer, but her distress was growing by the second. An unexpected twist of fate soon added to our predicament when, overtaken by the urge to relieve myself as well, I decided to pull over on the side of the road to answer nature's call. Daniela, unable to wait any longer, hastily exited the car and disappeared into the nearby bushes. I ventured to the other side of the road and into the woods, my own need for privacy compelling me to find a discreet spot. It was during these crucial moments, while my friends remained blissfully unaware, that our peaceful night took a sinister turn. With the unsettling sound of Daniela's cries still echoing, I decided to call out to her, concerned about her prolonged absence. Michael, having a stronger voice, joined me in shouting her name. However, the only reply we received was the haunting echo of her name in the dark and desolate surroundings. Worry began to gnaw at our hearts, leading us to believe that something was terribly wrong. With mounting concern, we ventured into the wilderness to locate Daniela. Michael, without hesitation, came along for the rescue mission, while Eddie remained in the car, his inebriation preventing him from comprehending the gravity of the situation. Navigating the thick underbrush with a flashlight from my glove box, our footsteps muffled by the rustling of plants, our voices echoed into the night. The atmosphere grew tense, an eerie silence broken only by the occasional laughter from our intoxicated friend. But then, amid the darkness, the stillness was disrupted by an unsettling sound. I reached out to halt Michael, his laughter echoing alongside mine, as something more than nature seemed to be lurking nearby. The night breeze whispered through the foliage, but it was not alone in its utterance. We heard it again, a whisper. 2 voices, and they were not ours. A chilling realization dawned upon us, and we signaled for silence. Cautiously, we made our way through the crops, pushing aside the dense foliage. It was in one of the narrow clearings, a makeshift path through the wilderness, that we glimpsed an unexpected figure. At first, my flashlight illuminated only the lower extremities, and I presumed it was Michael. However, the figure's countenance was shrouded in darkness, and it was not our friend. In that moment, a sense of dread overcame me as I processed the sight. A stranger, a man whose intentions remained veiled by the obscurity of the night, had joined our clandestine search. His obscured features sent shivers down my spine. I reacted instantly, darting back in the direction from which we came. The chase that ensued was swift, and my fear-fueled sprint returned me to the car in a mere 10 seconds. Meanwhile, Michael was also closing in, as his laughter slowly transformed into a realization of the bizarre situation. Eddie remained unconscious in the car, the alcohol rendering him oblivious to our predicament. Michael and I were left to fend for ourselves. The intruder, whom I had managed to escape, lurked menacingly in the darkness. As panic engulfed us, I resorted to the horn, sounding it relentlessly in a desperate attempt to alert our friends. Michael emerged from the woods, bearing an unconscious Daniela, her forehead marred by a gash, the result of a violent blow from an unknown assailant. I assisted Michael in securing her in the back seat. However, the source of her injury remained an enigma. Michael, who had also joined our hasty exit from the woods, made no mention of what he had seen. My immediate concern was Daniela's well-being, and I rushed her to the nearest hospital, a mere 10 minutes away. Our journey to the hospital was fraught with tension and worry. Daniela's fate hung in the balance, and our experience was tainted by fear. Little did we know, the horror had only just begun. Upon arrival at the hospital, Daniela was promptly treated for her head wound. During this time, Michael finally disclosed that he had witnessed an unknown assailant dragging her through the woods. It sent shivers down our spines to imagine what might have occurred had the intruder reached her first. Upon awakening, Daniela's memory of the night was nothing more than a blank canvas, her recollection ending with the onset of the party. With more questions than answers, we contemplated the chilling encounter, one that would forever haunt us as the night we came face to face with an inexplicable terror on Highway 513. It was 12:17, according to the vivid green glow of my car's dashboard clock. I was on my way home from the night shift at the pharmacy I worked at, driving along a dimly lit and deserted highway. Late-night driving had its own set of dangers, particularly on this road. There were no streetlights, few other cars, and the constant risk of deer suddenly appearing in the headlights. This hazardous combination always made me cautious, and I maintained a strict speed limit of 50 miles per hour. As the road meandered to the left, I noticed an unusual sight on the horizon, a line of reflective lights formed by traffic cones. Among them, a flashing blue light pierced the darkness, which I presumed was the reflection of some safety vest. My confusion mounted as I approached this peculiar scene, and I hadn't yet realized the need to slam my brakes until it was nearly too late. I came to a screeching halt, bringing my vehicle to an abrupt stop. At this point, a man clad in a reflective vest began walking towards my car. His arms were outstretched, waving, presumably signaling for me to remain stationary. I watched him in confusion, unable to grasp the situation. Finally, I began to register the urgency and slammed the brakes. As the man drew closer, I could make out what seemed to be a police uniform beneath his reflective vest. He knocked on my window, signaling for me to lower it. I complied, my window whirring down, offering a clear view of his face, which I hoped to remember for a detailed description. The man was a tall, slender black officer with a slight stubble. He appeared to be in his mid-20s and sported a single earring on his left ear. His voice, unusual for an officer, was low and non-commanding. He calmly requested my license and registration, which confused me further. I hadn't been speeding or suspected of any wrongdoing. I voiced my concerns, inquiring about the reason for this request. In response, he paused and glanced to his left before returning his gaze to me, explaining that this was a sobriety checkpoint. His voice remained oddly gentle as he asked me to step out of the vehicle for a sobriety test. I obliged, opening my car door and stepping out. A significant height difference became apparent. The officer loomed over me. From his vest pocket, he withdrew a roll of tape, carefully unrolling it to a length of approximately 15 feet. He instructed me to place one foot at the tape's edge and extend my arms out to the sides. The sobriety test was executed with ease, my steps measured and posture steady. However, the officer's close proximity was disconcerting. Upon completing the test, I found my gaze drawn back to the blue flashing light, which was not perched atop a police car but an older, unmarked sedan. As my growing unease began to dawn upon me, I requested to see the officer's badge. His response was not to show his identification, but rather to fix a blank, inscrutable gaze upon me. Slowly, a sinking feeling overwhelmed me, and I realized that something was terribly wrong. This man was not a cop. He mumbled something unintelligible as he approached his vehicle, causing me to assume he was retrieving his badge. It was at this moment of distraction that I made my escape, bolting back to my car. The man's eyes locked onto me, and he swiftly raised a gun, aimed in my direction. With no time to spare, I floored the accelerator, speeding through the traffic cones as I made my escape. The headlights of his vehicle flickered to life a few hundred feet behind me, but I was already traveling at over 60 miles per hour, and there was no chance of him catching up. As the next exit appeared, I took it, extinguishing my car's lights under the welcoming glow of street lamps. I continued my journey home, navigating by the ambient light, hoping to draw less attention. It was a nerve-wracking drive that ultimately led me to my house safe and sound. Through the ordeal, I couldn't help but wish I had a dash cam, a tool that could have captured the harrowing events as they unfolded. If I'd had such evidence, it would undoubtedly have found its way onto the news, exposing the chilling encounter that occurred on that otherwise quiet highway. I embarked on a journey from Maine to Upper New York to spend a week with family. Leaving work around 5:30, I knew I wouldn't arrive until well past 1 in the morning. To enjoy the balmy weather, I'd removed the top of my Jeep Wrangler, embracing the open-air ride. It was somewhere in Vermont when the gas light suddenly flickered to life and the car's anxious beeping filled the quiet night. Unfortunately, the car's gas gauge was malfunctioning, rendering it impossible to estimate how much fuel remained. My brother, who had driven the car the previous day, assured me that he'd filled the tank to the brim, but this proved either an error or a lie. A blue service sign whizzed past, bearing a gas station symbol, so I exited the highway, turning onto a desolate road that I hoped would lead me to civilization. The illusion was shattered when my car began shaking and sputtering, emitting worrisome noises. It came to an ignominious halt. It was an unbelievable turn of events. I had run out of gas. I jumped out of the car and dialed AAA, providing them with my precise location. They promised to dispatch assistance within 20 minutes, which was reassuring yet mildly frustrating. For approximately 15 minutes, I strolled around my immobilized car, scrolling through my phone, texting friends about my predicament, and checking social media. The surroundings were eerily quiet. No distant traffic sounds, no passing vehicles. Just the symphony of crickets and nocturnal creatures hidden in the woods. Then came an unexpected disturbance. Footsteps from the woods. The steps were heavy, and I assumed it might be a deer or another harmless animal. However, this being bear country, the notion of encountering a bear was never far-fetched. I walked to the passenger side of the car, closer to the source of the sounds, hoping to spot a deer or a benign creature. What I encountered, though, left me speechless. From behind a tree just ahead, a figure emerged, its eyes appearing lifeless, like empty voids. They seemed unresponsive, and I couldn't discern if they were gazing at me. I was so engrossed in this disconcerting sight that I neglected to scream, despite the overwhelming horror of the situation. I reflexively rolled up the windows on both sides and turned off the headlights, rendering the inside of the car an inky abyss. The car's top was off, leaving me in a state of complete vulnerability, while the cacophony of the nocturnal forest enveloped me. A chilling sensation washed over me as I heard the sound of someone tugging at the car door handle. I steeled myself, determined not to move or utter a sound. I expected pounding on the glass or a hand reaching through the gap behind the front door to unlock it. I was wholly exposed, my anxiety surging as I dreaded the sound of approaching footsteps. The sinking feeling in my stomach was unbearable as a hand aggressively seized the back of my shirt. Panic overcame me, and I screamed at the top of my lungs. At that very moment, as a sliver of light crept in and the growl of a truck engine filled the night, I knew help was approaching. I sat up and spun around to witness the headlights of a AAA truck. The mysterious assailant was already gone, retreating into the shadows. With my car refueled by the calm and reassuring AAA operator, I managed to set aside the dreadful encounter. However, the aura of that night still haunts me, with the image of the lifeless figure peering from behind the tree etched indelibly in my mind.